So I've been thinking about what to talk about for about a week and a half. And nothing particular came to mind. So I always go with something called, when I don't know what to talk about, I start talking about conscious evolution. But before I begin that, I just want to take a moment and express something. My heart is heavy. My soul is sad. The events of the past 2 weeks have made me question the power of love. Have made me question the evolution of the humankind towards a higher state of being. Because I found myself, as these terrible things were going on, looking at the condition and having trouble knowing a greater truth. I found myself watching pain and anger express itself as violence and death in so many different ways, in so many different places, and feeling that the only response that I could see that made sense was to continue that anger and violence and death onto annihilation. And that shocked me to my core. To be brought to a place where I felt the only solution was to wipe out a portion of the world as the only solution that I could see. And so I had doubt about the evolution of who we are and what we teach and what we do. Because sometimes in the face of the conditions that we encounter in life, whether they be personal or societal or global, it's hard to see the good that is unfolding for us. It's hard to see the opportunities that are being provided to us to move to a higher level of consciousness. You see, we have choices to make. In every moment, we have choices to make individually, in our communities, in our nation, and in this world that we experience. And the choices that are being made now are killing people. And that angers me. And the typical response with anger is to express that anger by being angry and wanting to do the same thing that you're angry about somebody else doing. And I thought about that, and it made me sad. And I thought about the opportunity that it showed for me to be what I always talk about being. So we have choices to make. We can live in the fear that demands walls, that demands greed, that demands isolation from the wholeness that is the human race, from this little ball of mud that we live on. And we can follow that fear into separation and death. Or we can choose to raise ourselves up to a higher level of understanding, to the level of understanding that we are one. Currently involved in Pokemon Go. But that's part of the thing that is bringing us together. You see, these things, whether you have one that talks to you or not, are connecting us in a way that we've never been connected as a whole before on this entire planet. Yes, there are parts that aren't there yet, but there are parts all over the world now where we are seeing the things going on that we were unable to see not even 10 years ago. When it took entire troops of media personnel going to other countries and then filtering that information back, it took weeks to get information that Turkey had an unsuccessful military coup. We knew that in minutes. We knew that the people rose up and said, no, we don't want to be run by the military. But it brings it into our consciousness, and it allows us to be in this place where, once again, we need to make choices about how we're going to respond in the world, what we're going to be in the world when all of this seems to be mounting on the side of separation, on the side of hate, on the side of anger, on the side of privilege. Because each one of us has an opportunity to be something different, to choose a higher road, to take the challenge of being love in an unloving situation. Now, I'm going to say that it is difficult to walk the high road. It is not easy in the face of conditions that seem to bring us to a point of responding in kind, to choose not to respond in kind, to choose love, to choose better ways of getting to a better place for everyone. See, but that has to happen on the individual level. We can be who we were, and each of us, to some degree, has some fear that we're living with, which will want to separate us from the idea that we are one. That it is all one. That there really is no difference, despite the condition, between my existence and your existence. This is what we talk about. There is one infinite intelligence, individualizing itself as a conscious channel through each one of us. So God is us now, experiencing us as human beings. And that's true for every single person on the planet. Yet we want to build walls. Whether they be the walls of our disinterest, the walls of our indifference to injustice, the walls that we build around ourselves to save ourselves from the pain of having to express love openly and accept the consequences. Now, I know for myself, I have fear inside of me that doesn't want to expose that I want to be love to the world. And I'm standing up here talking to you guys. So I'm pretty sure that's a pretty universal thing. That we build walls around ourselves to protect the parts that we find truly valuable. And then we build walls around those we want to protect who we've shared that with. Our families, our smaller communities. And then we build bigger walls around larger communities to keep other people out so that they don't disrupt our expression of love within those communities without recognizing that everybody's doing that. At some point, we need to pull back to a higher understanding of life. At some point, we need to make a choice about what we want to experience, because you can go right on being who you were, without a doubt. And in fact, you can devolve into something worse for yourself. Everybody is free of choice. Or we can take the challenge to be an expression of a higher idea in everything that we're doing, in everything that we're bringing into the world, in all that we can be and experience in this world. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this all being good. And I demand to see the blessing in it. You know, this is where the challenge comes in the personal journey that we're taking in evolution. We have the choice to evolve to a higher state of consciousness. Maybe it requires that we study for a while to find out what that higher state of consciousness is. Maybe it requires that we interact or meditate or pray to get to a higher understanding of what love is for us to experience and express in this world in all cases. Whatever we each require, the opportunity is available right now for us to bring that into being. To look deep within ourselves, because all of the knowledge that we ever needed was always inside of us. There is an infinite power. We are one with it. That infinite intelligence is embodied in us. If we look deeply within ourselves, that which we require for a greater experience of joy is now present. So I'm going to tell you what that was. Since the time that we rang that bell, you've heard this go off twice. 2 people have been shot and killed in the United States. heart is sad and heavy. We may not effectively desire that individually, yet collectively we accept this. Collectively, we allow this. We even invite it collectively. So there are choices to be made. I'm not telling you what to do. Honest. That's your conscious choice, and maybe you're all for that, and that's okay. Because what we teach is self-empowerment and how that reflects into the world. But I cannot, for the life of me, understand how we can allow 38,000 gun deaths in this country every year. They don't have that much where they're actually trying to shoot at each other. That's real. We accept that as a country. And it makes my heart sad, because this is what the challenge of being love in a situation in which it is patently unloving requires of us. You see, love is not an easy love. Love is not easy. It is not a warm, fuzzy thing. It can be. It's beautiful when we're sharing our deep, intimate feelings with another human being who we love and trust, so that all of the walls come down and we feel the unity that we often talk about. But knowing that we are love and here to be love, and knowing that there are things to do that we can express love, requires of us a higher discipline. An evolution into a consciousness where everything becomes an opportunity to choose to be the best, highest path in that situation. Whether it's the encounter with the person who's homeless and struggling to get along, or the addict who is looking for help, or the addict who's not looking for help, the person who's hungry, angry, lonely, whatever these things are where we feel a separation come into our lives, love is the responsibility to author a different expression of what we can experience. It's wonderful to have a high consciousness and recognize that the infinite abundance of the universe is mine right now, and I can have everything I want. Because we teach that too. And you can do that. Because when you have nothing, that's a really great place to move to. Honest to goodness. If you're sitting there and you have nothing, and you start doing this work and you start changing your consciousness, and all of a sudden you go from not having anything to living in a nice place and having enough food to eat and having a car to drive and I've watched this happen for people. I have watched this happen for people. That is certainly evolving your consciousness from a consciousness of lack to an empowerment of being able to bring things about in your life. And then there's the next evolution of consciousness, where you go about having recognized that you have a power to create things in your life by the thoughts that you bring into your mind, that you utilize to create that experience that we talk about. That's practical prayer for you. Works right there. Recognize the truth. This good is mine now. That truth comes into your experience, then it becomes every day. And then when we turn around, there's another level of consciousness that moves beyond that. Having discovered we have the power, we can move into the consciousness that there is a directive from the power that is the allness of love to be love. And we can become a channel of that love for everyone we can encounter. This next level of consciousness requires discipline. And I know we don't like to talk about that, because it would be nice if I could just pray and clap my hands and there it is, all done. But you do not evolve consciously without making the conscious choices that allow for you to always see the higher view. To become that channel of love, that channel of peace, that channel of harmony, that channel of joy. To become a channel of spirit itself for all that you encounter. And understand that that's what's going on. Raises not only your own vibration and ability to move and work in this world, but it raises the vibration of everyone you come in contact with. And so we evolve on a larger scale. when we evolve on an individual scale. And there's a level even above that. So we can go from being a channel of this Spirit, and it comes from being disciplined when we're down here in the victim consciousness, and we discipline ourselves to recognize that we're empowered. We get into the powerful consciousness, and then we move into the channel consciousness, and then you got to let all of that stuff go and just be the consciousness. Now, people have done this throughout history. We have records of them. Most of them started major religions. Okay? They reached this level of consciousness and became the avatars that we hold up to the entire species as our examples of this is the potential of human existence. To be the Christos, the Christ consciousness, to be the consciousness of Krishna, embodying God itself, to be the prophets. Whatever religion you happen to be practicing, there is in each one of them the example of the Most High. And it's given to us. And all we need to do is look at it and become it. And again, it's not easy. It's not easy when you see pain and suffering and things that want us to make a wall around ourselves so that I can have my nice little garden and keep you out of it. To let go of all that and say, no, come into my garden. Come here and find rest. Come and find unity and communion and love. Because at the core, we all want to have love in our lives. We all have an inherent understanding that something is wrong when we are not receiving this. That we are disconnected and separate when we do not feel the spiritual truth of our unity with life, both in the mind and in the heart. So when we open our hearts by doing small acts of kindness, by continuing our spiritual practice to meditate, to be quiet in your soul so that when these things challenge you in life, you can remain quiet in your soul and peaceful, to open ourselves to the vulnerability of being the love that we would wish to receive in our lives. This is the discipline that leads us to that state of avatar, to enlightenment. And when enlightened, what do? We go back and be the same person doing the same things with a higher level of consciousness, with a greater understanding of what is mine to do in this life now. Because I know each one of you has this possibility, this potential, is most likely a higher level of consciousness than myself in most given moments, given the last 2 weeks. Each one of us has this opportunity to be the love that we wish to see happening in the world. And that may require that we do some challenging things, like stand up and be counted for peace. That's not an easy one to do, but it can be done. To discern what's acceptable in our lives from a higher state of consciousness, and then to live that truth. To allow ourselves to be the greatness that is within each one of us that we keep trying to hide with our fear and our withdrawal and our attitude of let somebody else take care of that. Because, as the reading was saying, if you spot it, you got it. And it's yours to solve. So don't turn away from it. I invite you, the next time you find yourself in a situation where you know you could be loved, but it's challenging to be loved, stop and take a breath and look for the courage within to do the next right thing, to be that love and that expression, because you have no idea how much power that has. It has more power than all of the hate in the world to do one loving act with one other individual that recognizes that there is no separation between me and thee. I love you. Namaste.